Hello and welcome to the British Strength Podcast, the only podcast on earth hosted by the only 3 British citizens ever to be ordained as starting strength coaches. I'm Jack Bissett, that is Carl Ragavan, and that is Byron Johnston, and today we are going to talk about how you can get strong. So welcome to the show. Now, last episode we convinced you that you need to start strength training. You can thank us for that later. But the question is, well, how do I do that? Why can't I get strong using kettlebells or dumbbells or machines? Why do I have to use barbells? Byron, what say you to this question?
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. So before I get into the formulation, I just want to take a little step here to just say something. If you are a person or if you know someone who has previously been completely sedentary and has suddenly just started doing something like, even if it's walking with a backpack, taking out a gym membership, just something engaging with like some form of exercise. Overall, I'm always pro that step, okay? So if you have just got yourself a little home gym, you think, okay, I'll get some weights at home, and you've just got a kettlebell or a dumbbell, okay, even that to me is a positive first step, a positive beginning, all right? But with what we're doing, what we are discussing is what is optimum, what is the most efficient way to get you the best possible result for the time that you are putting into something. So as starting strength coaches, we deal with precision of something, precision of decision making and outcomes, okay? We basically get paid for the results that we generate for people. We don't generate results, people don't work with us, but people do work with us, and that's because we know how to do these results. So let me just be clear about that. If you've gone from nothing at all to something, I'm very, very happy. Let me tell you how, if you've gotten into that and you want to know how to optimize it, let me deal with that for you, okay? So many forms of literature in gym posters or posters on message boards love to use the word strength. It's a real buzzword. If you go into the supermarket, the buzzword there they like to use is protein. Everything is high protein right now. Bread is high protein. Everything's high protein. And in fitness spaces, the buzzword is strength. Everything makes you stronger, okay? That is somewhat true, but it's not completely true, all right? When you are going from a position of, let's say you have been sedentary or really very detrained in your life, and you start doing some form of physical activity, in the very, very early phases, even if it's just cycling or bodyweight drills, initially, the novice effect means that as a detrained person, you will make some initial progress on these systems, whether or not you're picking up a kettlebell, doing some bodyweight drills, just sitting in your first ever few resistance machines. Yes, initially, you're going from a kind of a level playing field. The first few weeks in, you start to make progress and you think you're really onto something. It's exactly what happened to me before I found barbell training, okay? But then very soon after doing that, you're going to hit a problem. Those results, that progression you were making is suddenly going to stall. It's going to flatline. Now, you'll see people, if you go into the gym and you see people on machines or dumbbells, or even if you're driving past places where people are doing those outdoor kind of park workouts with the ropes and all that kind of stuff, go ahead and drive past there 3 to 6 months later, or go into that gym 3 to 6 months later, have a look at that same person. What you will see is them more or less doing exactly the same amount of reps with the weights exactly the same as it was all those months ago and pretty much looking exactly the same. Okay, and this is when people get really fed up of things, and it requires a real buy-in for them to keep going back. Now, I've got the answer to that problem. We've got the answer to that problem, and the formulation for that is barbell training. Okay. So the barbells in the gym, and specifically I'm talking about the long barbells that have a sleeve on the end, which is it's a 2-inch sleeve. So it will take the larger plates that you see in the gym. I'm just separating that out because sometimes in gyms you get this little rack of these barbells, the short barbells with plates that are permanently welded onto them. And those are kind of ones that are used in exercise classes. So I want to separate. It's not that I'm talking about. It's the long barbells that are like 7 foot long. And those instruments are what I call weapons of mass construction. And that is what we're going to do, okay? Those are the most powerful things we have in the gym to transform and change you. And the reason for that is because, one, they are ergonomic to your body in the way that you move with them. They're very, very movable in the way that they're designed to be used with the rack where they sit in. And secondly, we can fractionally load that piece of equipment. So whereas you may find in a dumbbell progression or a resistance machine progression that the next leap up and the next pin on the stack is maybe 10, 12 kilos away, well, with barbell training, we can hit that dosage on the barbell to as exquisite as just half a kilo. So a very, very small amount. We're talking about the weight of, like a remote control. It's very precise the weight we can progress. We've also got very, very heavy plates as well, 25 kg plates. This enables a lifetime of progression. Okay, I'm closer to 50 than I am 20, and I'm still hitting PRs, and I've been doing this a number of years now. Carl's been doing it even longer than I have, still hitting PRs. Yeah, still expects to hit PRs. All right, so hopefully that's got the ball over the net on that one. Jack or Carl, do you want to chime in with something there?
Yeah, so what I just realized from what you just said there about these people who do park workouts, the difference between them and us is that they're doing a routine. Just like there's a routine of, you spend 5 minutes brushing your teeth, you spend a routine amount of time commuting to work, right? There's a system of like time that combines, and you do these things and these steps, and it just becomes part of your daily habits. There's nothing wrong with a routine. And in fact, if more people had a fitness lifestyle where they did go out to the park and they did do these things like with kettlebells or machines, if they did a routine style training program, they will have fitness and health benefits. Good for you, right? But what we're talking about is we want results. And with results, you need a progression, because your body doesn't adapt without progression. You need to push yourself further than you've been in order for your body to signal change. That's the best way I could say it, is that we're not doing routines, we're doing progressions.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, Carl, that was a good point you made there, because let's talk about those kind of that formulation of classes where you're turning up to let's say a community center that's got a room that the instructor can hire out and they can bring a few pieces of equipment, or you're outside in a park area, and again, you don't need to bring anything, you just turn up in sportswear. Remember this, right? The instructor can only bring that which they can fit in the boot of their car and easily get up the stairs to the room that you're in, yeah? So they don't want the kind of stuff we're dealing in. If you see Carl or me or Jack lifting, look at the barbell. You're not going to be taking that up and down stairs 3 times a day in different community centers. Not practical, okay? So you're limited by what even the instructor can bring to provide you. So whereas some exercise is always better than nothing at all, you've got that stopping point if you're not careful. And although you may be putting in so much sweat and so much time to doing it and enjoying yourself, great by the way, just know that you're hitting an artificial limit because of that.
And if we're interested primarily in progressions, it just so happens that there is one ready-made for you if you want to get strong. It's the starting strength novice linear progression, and that is custom designed to maximize the strength gains that you make when you start training seriously. We're not doing classes anymore. We're in the weight room, ideally with a coach, doing our NLP. What does that look like? What does your first day of NLP look like when you come into the gym? What are you doing?
So yeah, with NLP, novice linear progression. So if any time you hear us say NLP, that's what it stands for, novice. So just rewinding a little bit here, the reason we say novice is your ability to make progress under the bar. It's not to do with your level of being a beginner, right? Beginner and novice are 2 different things. So novice is, can you add weight to the bar every session? And usually this is how we lay it out. So NLP, first day in the weight room, we teach you how to squat. And for all purpose reasons, we're not teaching you how to front squat. We're not teaching you how to overhead squat. We're not teaching you safety bar squats either. Why is that? It's because we want the system of three things. Whenever we choose a lift, we want it to use the most weight, the most muscle mass, and the most effective range of motion. And for those three criterias, the bar is going to be low bar position on the spine of the scapula, right? And I think that gets a lot of confusion with us being powerlifters, is because it so happens that another group of lifters have realized that this is also a very strong way to back squat, and the powerlifters also use the low bar back squat. Can you get stronger with a high bar? Yes. Can you get stronger with a front squat? Yes. But what we're trying to do is leverage our bodies to make the muscles and our body as strong as possible, as efficiently and effectively as possible. So we choose the low bar squat. That's the first lift, the most technical, and it's going to add the most amount of bang for your buck. So low bar squat is the first thing. Depending on your level, sometimes I've actually, no shit, I've had to train someone for almost 2 hours if they're that bad at learning this progression. Sometimes all we can do is the squat. So that sometimes might be your day one. But in an ideal world, we do 3 sets of 5 working sets. So you start with the bar and we progress, add 5 to 10 kilos each set. Usually you're going to end up with a 60 kilo squat for a man, maybe 30 kilo, maybe 40 kilo squat for a female. And we're going to do 3 sets of 5 at that weight. We're going to stop you at a weight technically which you're holding as much good technique as possible, but it's still on that knife edge of being challenging. So you're going to start with the bar, work up to 3 sets of 5 reps and do that weight. And then ideally we're going to use the press. All right, we're not going to use dumbbells. We're not going to do strict press. We're actually going to use an old style press where we throw the hips like the Olympic days, like Serge Redding. We're going to use our hips and do what we call the press. Some people call it press 2.0, but that's what we're going to do. Same kind of principles. With a female, we might even start with a 5 kilo bar and then progress up. With a male, we might even struggle to do a 20 kilo bar. Sometimes I have to get the 15 out because the grip itself is quite fatiguing at the start. Same kind of principle as the squat. We add weight to the bar. Men, you're going to struggle to get 35, 40 kilos if you're lucky. Women, you're probably going to get 15 to 20 kilos. That's the kind of ranges. So because the weights are so light, this first day's workout might even just take 45 minutes because weight on the bar is so little. And then the last lift you're going to do for your NLP for day one is a deadlift. So from the floor, conventional deadlift. Again, this lift, unlike all the others, is actually going to start with weight on the floor to begin with, because the height that the deadlift needs to be starting at, again, quote me if I'm wrong, I think it's like 7.5 inches, something like that, off the floor where your shins are. So the deadlift height, if we start with 2.5 kilo cast iron plates, the lift itself will actually be more of a deficit. So if you're starting with much lighter weights, you might need bumper plates or technique plates to make sure that the height is correct. Same principle, add weight, but the difference is you're only going to work up to 1 set of 5 on the deadlift, because this lift, out of all the others, usually you're going to lift a lot more weight. So guys typically can lift 80 to 100 kilos day one sometimes, and then the females, again, similar, 50 to 60 kilos, maybe even more than 60 kilos. But you're only doing 1 set of 5 because we've realized over experience and training knowledge that doing 1 set of 5 is enough stress to make progress, but also the muscles in the lower back region, they are the most fatiguing in terms of the longest to recover. So that's the kind of first day of NLP.
There's something you mentioned at the start there, Carl, which I want to reiterate for our dear listeners, and that's where you were talking about the novice versus the beginner. A beginner, right, is someone who has never lifted any weights before whatsoever. A novice is someone who can go through the entire stress recovery adaptation cycle in 2 or 3 days. You may have been, dear viewer, coming to the gym and playing around with weights for years, and you can still be a novice. There are undoubtedly people listening to this, are tens of listeners who would not class themselves as novices because they've been going to the gym for a while, but they are still, in fact, novices. They're not beginners, but they are still novices, and so they should take this program seriously. They might not need a whole bunch of time on the technique stuff at the start because they already know how to squat, although they probably don't, and they already know how to press, although they probably don't. But they can still make the progress of a novice using this program because that's where they are in their training. So just because you already go to the gym and use these exercises, it doesn't mean that you're beyond this program, that you're better at it. You're probably not, and you could probably go back and do day one just as Carl described here and work up from there and make more progress like this than you have done in the past 6 months of whatever it was that you were doing.
Just to add in there as well, traditionally, if someone was to do squats, deadlifts, presses, these kind of barbell lifts, a lot of the time they would pick them onto 1 day a week, whereas we're challenging you to do these lifts 3 days a week. And a lot of people have never milked the process of NLP. So like you just said, most people are novices because they've never done this process. And this is the real way that we label how to make your programming more complicated, which is what everyone wants to do, the sexy stuff and all this more complicated stuff. But 9 times out of 10, most people haven't even done squats for 3 sets of 5, 3 days a week, and added weight for those lifts. Most people have never done that.
It would be unthinkable to have that formulation in a personal training session, to even start with a squat like that and then do it every single time for a client. I don't think I've ever seen a personal trainer take that approach. Certainly whenever I had personal training sessions in my lost years in the wilderness, those weren't even in there at all. It was all like straight to the chest press or dumbbells straight away. No, the main theory were like squat, press, deadlift. It was more like biceps, shoulders, abs. It was more like that. That would be what they think is the novice linear progression. But surely it's got to be biceps and sit-ups and, that's what I'd expect to hear. So it's as erratic.
Legs, bums, and tums.
There you go. Nice 3 little words. Yeah, legs, bums, tums. So, as I said in the previous podcast, we are formulating a different way of thinking about this. And this selection of exercises puts us in a position to train the most amount of muscle mass when we go into the gym. Now, that does matter because I don't know about you guys, but I have still never had a client who has not been short on time. They are all time sensitive. No one can just do an extra 4 hours in the gym. They all need to go in there. They're quite happy to go in there and do the work, but they don't have time to mess around, and they hate it when they're spinning their wheels and nothing is happening. They don't like getting messed about and not getting the results. And in those sorts of clients, the more up the chain they are in terms of their business acumen, in terms of if they're managerial or above, the more they want precision. And they like precision. They like to get this done. The novice linear progression basically brings that in very, very quickly. And in the first 2 weeks, you look at the start numbers, and within 2 to 3 weeks, the data is absolutely clear. They're writing it down, so there's no way they know it's been fiddled. And the fact that we're even writing something down is different to what I had years ago for what I've seen being done in different types of classes and things that people might have participated in or seen. The fact that we're tracking this kind of data and seeing it going up. But by far, the most radical thing I experienced when I went into barbell training with starting strength was the fundamental thing that in our world, we don't wait for progress. We drive progress. Let me say that again. We're not just doing something and hope the body's adjusted and then you got stronger. Oh, we did it for 6 weeks and then his squat was this much. Or, we did an 8 weeks program and his deadlift was here. We're not waiting around. We don't wait for progress. We drive progress. We will make it happen. That's the real difference in what I've experienced when I started this journey in starting strength.
I think that's the real difference between what we were talking about at the start, what Carl called the routine workouts and these exercise classes and stuff, and what we are doing is that this is training. This is really serious training. We are aiming at something and we are aggressively pursuing it. All of those other people, you talked, Byron, at the start about the people doing the ropes. They're doing their classes, but they're not pursuing progress. And funnily enough, a stalk doesn't just bring it to the doorstep. They don't make any progress because they're not attacking it. And when you said about, you see the progress in the data, I'd like to emphasize that. Like, sometimes people say, well, you're only adding 5 pounds to a lift. You're only adding 2.5 kilograms to a lift. It's like, yes, that's true. 3 times a week, every week, for the next 3 months. If you start on a 60 kilogram squat, 3 months down the line, you're squatting 150 kilograms, and you are probably the strongest person in your gym. That is a level of progress which is basically incomprehensible to most, certainly to most trainers and PTs, and to certainly most people in commercial gyms. They would accuse you of being on steroids for making progress that quickly. It's incredible as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing else like it. There's nothing else that drives progress that quickly or that effectively.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to mention as well is what I outlined was day one. So you come into the gym, you squat, you press, you deadlift. We've talked about the reps and sets. Day two usually is 48 hours after that. Again, we want this stress recovery adaptation to occur. The reason we say that is we can't just do Monday's workout or whatever the day it is you start on, whether it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. There's a reason to have these gaps. We're not just doing Monday AM workout and then we're coming back in on Monday PM to do the next workout. That doesn't have enough time for your body to recover. So usually this is the formula we stick to have 48 hours recovery. Sometimes people need 3 days between training sessions, but then it becomes a bit more sporadic and chopped up. So for the ease of a 7-day weekly plan, we train 3 days a week. So day one, we've already talked about. Day two is slightly different. We're still going to squat, but this time, like Jack says, we're going to add 2.5 kilos for 3 sets of 5. Warm up with the bar, work all the way up. And then the next lift, we're actually going to alternate these 2 lifts. So we're going to go from pressing, we're actually going to bench. And the bench is different to how powerlifters may bench because we're actually going to load the palm. So we want it to be in a straight line over the forearm and elbow. So if you see bench press in more of a competitive setting, they have a much, much wider grip and the range of motion may be like 1 to 2 inches. That's not going to make you stronger as a general human. That length of bench press, if you're doing a 2-inch range of motion bench press, that is going to get white lights in a powerlifting meet. This is the difference that Byron talked about us not going into that level of trying to be competitive. We just want to be strong. So we still want a good range of motion to get stronger. So for that reason, we have more of a medium style width on our bench press. Same kind of rep schemes we're doing. Start with the bar, work all the way up to a challenging weight. 3 sets of 5 again. Again, most men, usually this is the funny one because this is the guys that you can tell who've done a bit of weights in the weight room before, but they've never really attacked the squat. And usually the guys may like actually bench the same as their squat. So 60 kilo bench, Whereas the women, they're more accurate to form. They may bench 30 kilos, something along those lines. So you do 3 sets of 5 on the bench, and then we go back to the deadlift. But again, we're going to add 2.5 kilos. So that's day 1 and day 2. And then the final session that you're going to train is a repeat of day 1, but you're going to add 2.5 kilos to all those lifts. And how this kind of flip-flops is that you could call as week 1. So week 1, you've got squat, press, deadlift, squat, bench, deadlift, squat, press, deadlift, right? That's week 1. Whereas the pressing and the bench flips. So then you've got 2 days a week of benching, and then your middle day of the week is press. But again, the lifts are all driving up. We're keeping all the lifts identically the same. We're keeping all the variables the same. The only dial that we're turning up is intensity. We're, like Byron says, we're driving progress because we're adding weight to that bar. The reps and sets stay the same. The technique is rigid to our structure. But the only thing we're doing is turning up the juice. And that is the full NLP program for when you start out.
Yes. So I just wanted to talk about the difference on coaching and just going on the books. So 2 books that are well known: Starting Strength, the 3rd edition, Practical Programming. And when you get into the programming section of Starting Strength or all of Practical Programming, I think it's very important to note that you're in a very number-dense piece of literature. Okay, you'll be deep in these numbers. Not just the template of this 3 sets of 5, 1 sets of 5, exactly what Carl has outlined there, but I think the difference when you're dealing with the application of it and how we approach it as coaches is we're moving you from just a number formula. We're considering applying it to the biology of the situation. So we're not just systematically doing numbers. We're observing how you perform and what you can recover from. And so, yes, we're very good at applying stress, okay? The stress is the stimulus to your body to start to affect the change that we want to get you stronger, all right? But we cannot ignore recovery and the process of adaptation. That is the full cycle: stress, recovery, adaptation. And this is important to note. So one of the reasons why you might want to work with a coach if you're not sure about this is that we will not only be applying the numerically this systematic training to you in the numbers, but also observing the biology of how you react to it. And as Carl mentioned, sometimes that means you have 2 recovery days because maybe you're a bit older. Maybe you need a longer recovery window. Maybe you're someone else who can recover quicker, and we can capitalize on that. We're going to watch for those things. And we know how to make those adjustments and customize that to you, the person, and bring it beyond what you'll just see in text in print, okay?
You make an excellent point there, Byron, about recovery. And you've segued me very nicely, because I was trying to think of a way to segue into this, is that the NLP is not just your workouts in the gym, okay? Carl's laid out the program for you. There's tons of resources on the technique for these exercises. You understand the progression. You said yourself, we are aggressively pursuing progress here. None of that will work if you're eating like a baby and you're not getting enough sleep, okay? Part of the program is getting enough protein in. Part of the program is getting enough calories in to fuel your training. And part of the program is sleeping. Now, you've got life circumstances sometimes, all right? You've got babies, whatever. But you've got to do your best with that stuff, because that's part of it too. And you will not make the progress we're talking about if you neglect all of that stuff. It's not as simple as walking into the gym 3 days a week, doing whatever coach tells you, doing whatever's written down, and fucking off back home to eat some Doritos, have a wank, and go and watch Netflix for 3 or 4 hours before you go to bed. It doesn't work like that, okay? You got to have a high protein meal. You've got to go to bed before midnight, all right? Otherwise, you're just wasting your time and you're not going to get the results that we've been talking about for the past half an hour.
Yeah. And you'll start to know about it pretty soon as well, because and if your coach doesn't know about this, we'll just carry on initially turning up the dosage, right? We'll make these increases. And what I've seen when this happens is things like aches and pains start appearing when they don't need to, because the person's not recovered. So they'll feel achy or tight or just not feeling good about things. I first realized this with a case more than 2 years ago. And I was like, well, I was looking at the technique of the lift. Everything was going fine there. And then I had him do a protein audit, which is where we analyzed, okay, how much are you having a day? As soon as I did that protein audit, immediately spotted way under, probably like 70 grams under what he should be having. Okay, so here's the deal. Once we spotted it, we corrected it. Within 10 days of that correction, absolutely fine. No aches and pains. Deadlift progressing just fine. Feeling confident on it. Great, that's what we want. So it's a serious piece of the equation, this recovery. It's not to be taken lightly.
And just to note, what we deem as enough protein, usually for a male, is 200 grams of protein. That is 800 calories. Any normal person who's lifting weights should be able to stomach that.
Yeah, if you're whinging about having to eat 200 grams of protein, you're not really trying. And you don't really want to get strong. So stop being such a loser and eat more chicken. So, to summarize now, we've convinced you to get strong, and now we've given you the roadmap of how to get there. 3 days a week, big barbell exercises, sets of 5, add weight every single time, keep your technique tight, get your protein in, get your calories in, get your sleep in, and commit. Make the decision in your mind now that you are going to commit to the Novice linear progression for the next 3 or 4 months. If you can nail that down, you will be stronger than you've ever been in your entire life as a result of that, without having to do anything more complicated than lifting weights for sets of 5 and eating chicken. It's simple, but it works. Is that about right, chaps?
It's absolutely what I experienced. I mean, before doing this, I was training 5 days a week. I was doing 7 or 8 exercises per workout, and really getting no results. And when I switched into the program that we've discussed today, I went from doing 5 days a week down to 3 days a week, and only doing 3 things a time. And when I looked at it on paper, I thought to myself, this is going to be like I'm on holiday. This is going to be fine. Like, are you sure? So anyway, I tried everything else. So I may as well try this. Started doing it, and sure enough, in the first week or so, very, very straightforward. As time went on, that incremental addition of weight on the barbell really started to come into its own. What starts with this simple approach to doing things with attention to detail in the early days starts to add up. Weight on the bar, but your capability as well. That's where the result in the transformation is. That's where it happens.
All right. Well, this has been another terrific episode of the British Strength Podcast. Now, if you want more information about running your LP, you can contact any one of us. How can people get a hold of you, Carl?
You're on mute, Carl.
Bad habit. So my platform, you can capture me on Beautiful Strength Gym on all the platforms: X, Instagram, Facebook. Instagram is probably the one where you see me most. YouTube as well. All of those, you can contact my website, beautifulstrengthgym.com.
Byron?
On the internet, strengthrevolution.org, strengthrevolution.org, social media, Instagram, Strength Revolution Coaching.
And I am Jack_Cast Strength on Instagram. Share my memes, and my website is castironstrength.co.uk. This has been the British Strength Podcast. You have been wonderful. We'll talk to you next time.